Hello, everyone. Welcome to our live office hours evolution of F&I. We will be beginning in just a moment while we invite everybody into the room. All right, let's get started. Hello again, everybody. My name is Amanda Plisco, and welcome to Evolution of F&I, our latest edition of JM&A's live office hours. In today's presentation, we will talk about F&I strategy, showcase how selling F&I virtually can help solve some of your biggest challenges. And I'm excited to dive in and talk more about how this is really a win-win-win opportunity for your business, for your teams, and for your customers. So we've got a lot of great content to share with you. And as always, this next hour or so is all for your benefit. So if at any point you have a question for our panel, please send them through the questions tab at the bottom right corner of your screen. We'll be sure to get to them along the way. And at the end, we do always get this question. At the end, you'll get a recording of this so you can watch it on demand at any time. So take great notes, but also know that you can access this information ongoing. So let's get started. I'll start by introducing myself. My name is Amanda Plisco. I am on the marketing team here at JM&A Group. I am one of the faces behind some of the great content that JM&A Group puts out, whether that's through social media, on our website, and through this office hours platform. And if you haven't been on our website in a little while, we got a fresh upgrade not too long ago. So check us out, jmagroup.com. And if you go to jmagroup.com/resources, you will see a whole host of blogs, articles, videos, all sorts of support materials to help elevate your business and bring you to the next level. Joining me today are Jonathan Jordan, Manager of Sales Strategy, Zach Williams, a Dealer Performance Manager, and Alex Claiborne, Virtual F&I Specialist. Would you all mind introducing yourselves and we'll dive in?
Hello, I'm Alex Claiborne. I am a Virtual F&I Specialist with the JM&A Group. I've been with JM&A Group for about 3 years, and I travel the country and I help dealers implement and strategize virtual F&I in their stores. And I also help deliver deals virtually for our dealer partners.
Hello, everyone. My name is Zach Williams. I'm a Dealer Performance Manager, currently living in the upper Midwest, looking over a territory for North Dakota, South Dakota, and Minnesota. Been with the JM&A Group for 5 years and been in this territory for 4. I currently have several dealer group and dealerships, partners of ours, leveraging various aspects of the centralized and virtual F&I processes.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Jordan. I'm the Manager of Sales Strategy at JM&A. I've been on the JM&A team for about 7.5 years, and I'm focused on working with our dealer partners and our field sales team to make sure that we're prepared for the ever-changing retail landscape as it constantly evolves. And one of my biggest focuses is virtual F&I. And excited to spend some time with you today to talk about virtual F&I and specifically the centralized model. Just to reemphasize what Amanda said, we want your questions. We want this to be interactive. And so please feel free to use the questions tab to ask questions as we go through this office hours today. And with that, let's jump into it. So I want to start with just an excerpt from a study that we did with Automotive News last year. And we're going to share this study with you and make sure you have access to it. And I would encourage you to do it. But we surveyed consumers about the car buying experience and specifically around virtual and digital capabilities within that process. And a few numbers that really stood out for us when we reviewed that study are here on the slide. And the first one is 46% of consumers said they would enjoy a virtual or digital experience when shopping or purchasing their next vehicle. And 40% of consumers said they would likely buy their next vehicle from a dealership that offered a virtual or digital experience. So 46% said they would enjoy it, but 40% said they would buy their car from a dealership that offered it versus one that did not. Now, I want to emphasize when we talk about virtual and talk about digital, that doesn't necessarily mean outside of the showroom. You can offer your customers a digital/virtual experience in your showroom. And we're going to talk today a little bit more about what that looks like. And the last stat on the right-hand side of this slide is 44% of consumers said they would not select financing options or purchase F&I products without speaking to someone at the dealership first. So they want that virtual digital experience, but they also want a person involved when they start talking about financing and selecting products. And we really believe that virtual F&I is the perfect solution for these customer wants and needs as they go through the process. So you may be asking yourself, what exactly is virtual F&I? We throw around that term a lot, especially as we went through COVID last year. Virtual, remote, digital got thrown around a lot. The way we define virtual F&I is anytime the customer is in one location and the F&I manager is in another location. So this could mean a few different scenarios. This could mean the consumer is at home or in their office and the F&I manager is in the showroom. This could mean the customer is in one of your dealer group locations and the F&I manager is in another. Or it could even mean the F&I manager is in a remote location like a corporate office or maybe even working from home and the customer's in the showroom or at home as well. So it really gives you a lot of flexibility for F&I and takes away that physical location requirement for an F&I manager and for a customer. We started working on virtual F&I in October of 2018. And we first were trying to figure out, was this a good strategy? Was this a good approach for what customers were looking for? And would customers respond to the process? Would they like the process? And we realized very quickly that the process worked, that customers liked it. And so we started growing and we grew and grew and grew. And over the past 3 years, we've delivered over 15,000 virtual deals and we've learned a lot about the process. What we did is we took our in-store processes, which were very successful over a 40-year period of time, and we adapted them to the virtual world. We didn't completely reinvent the wheel. We had a lot of good processes that worked, and so we adapted them for the virtual space and wrapped technology and a process around that to make it work. Throughout all of this, we retain that human touch and interactive experience that we believe is really important and that customers also say they want when they're talking about financing and F&I products.
So Jonathan, you talk a lot about the customer experience and what customers have thought about virtual F&I. Virtual deals we know are still pretty new, at least in its start to finish, or even dealers that are doing it, part in store and part virtual. So what do customers really think about the virtual F&I process? Is it something that they've come to expect now? Really, what has been their feedback so far?
Amanda, the feedback's been overwhelmingly positive from when we first started this way back in 2018 to today. Customers, to be honest with you, you ask, are they expecting it? I think customers are expecting flexibility. Customers are expecting to be able to do business the way that they want to do business. And when we offer them virtual capabilities, whether it be at home, in store, I think they really appreciate that and they respond to it. We did a study earlier this year where we took 1,000 customers who'd been through the virtual F&I process. And one of the questions we asked them was, what do you prefer? Do you prefer this virtual experience you just went through or the traditional in-store face-to-face experience that you went through last time you purchased a car? And 87% of those customers said they preferred the virtual experience. And then we kind of dug down a little bit more as to kind of why did you prefer the virtual experience? And it was really all about it's easier, but more importantly, it's quicker. And they didn't have to wait for F&I, which is a huge pain point in a lot of places.
Yeah. Although sometimes technology can maybe be a barrier, and especially with virtual F&I being so new, it's only, we've only been doing it for a couple of years now. I have to imagine pretty much everybody who comes in to do a virtual deal is a first-time virtual customer, right? Alex, I know you're delivering deals all the time as a specialist. Can you tell us a story or give us an example of maybe when a customer was hesitant to go through the virtual process, and what do we do to support them through that conversation and enable them with the information they need to make a decision on their F&I products?
Right. Yes, there was a time when we were setting a dealer up on Centralized F&I. And at this point, we had already completed training with the F&I manager. So they were really taking the lead when it came to going through the entire deal. So I went to turn over the customer to Virtual F&I. And that's when I saw she began to get a little worried. She was explaining to me that she was not tech savvy at all. And she was worried that she might not be able to get through the entire process, or it might take her longer. And she was, of course, in a time crunch. But I explained to her that the virtual assistant would be doing most of the work. And I let her know that even if she did need to work with the technology a little bit more, they would give her detailed instructions if she did need to do anything. And then I also let her know that I would still be around just in case we needed to troubleshoot anything. And then it turned out after the deal, I asked the customer how she felt afterwards, and she could not have been happier. She explained that even though she could barely use her computer at home, she was very comfortable with the virtual process. She also explained that not only did she feel like it took less time, but she was just a lot more comfortable and didn't feel as much pressure going through virtual than she did in the traditional setting. So she ended up being very happy with the entire process and her car buying experience.
I think that's great. I mean, anytime we can make customers feel comfortable, be mindful of their time constraints and ensure that they have a great experience, that's a win for us. It's a win for the dealer. It's a win for the customer. I think that's a fantastic example. And now we've talked a little bit about virtual F&I and what it means, but there's not one way to do virtual F&I, right? There are a lot of different sort of models that we've put in place over the last couple of years. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, of course. So there are about 3 different models of virtual F&I. So the first one would be remote F&I. So at this point, this is allowing someone from the dealership to complete the F&I process during offsite and remote deliveries. So due to things like the pandemic, where customers just didn't feel comfortable coming into the dealership, or maybe a customer just doesn't live in the same city as the dealership and they're getting the vehicle shipped to them, this is where remote F&I would come in. It's allowing the customer to complete as much of the as much as the F&I process with an F&I manager at the dealership as possible without actually having to come into the store. Now, the second one, on-demand F&I. Now, this is where the dealership would actually reach out to a JM&A virtual assistant to deliver as much of the deal that can be done electronically. So typically, once a salesperson has closed the deal, the dealership would reach out to the virtual assistant, and they would complete the F&I process virtually. So currently, we actually have a virtual assistant that lives in Phoenix, and she's delivering deals for a dealership in Florida. And then the last model is the centralized F&I. Now, this is where we would help dealers become more efficient by training the dealership personnel on how to become virtual F&I managers. And I'll actually be able to dive a little bit deeper into what that centralized model looks like. So here we have these 2 different models for centralized F&I. So the first one on the left being a model where the entire dealer group can do deals for different stores from separate locations. So for example, if dealership 1 has 3 customers that are waiting to complete their paperwork, the F&I manager from dealership 2 can remote into dealership 1 and complete the deal virtually. Now, on the other hand, if dealership 3 only has 1 F&I manager, and it might happen to be their off day or they're on vacation, dealerships 1 and 2, they can complete deals for dealership 3 virtually. This helps keep the process moving and getting the customers in and out, and it's all around beneficial for all parties involved. Now, the second model on the right, this is where we have a centralized office setup that is full of virtual F&I managers, and they will actually complete deals for the entire dealer group, all from that location. So for instance, if There are floating F&I managers that travel to different stores throughout the week and help deliver deals. They can only be available to that one specific store for that day. Now, by putting them in a centralized location, this would allow the F&I managers to be able to deliver deals for the entire dealer group instead of that one specific store. They can cover, again, off days, vacations, and overflow from just this centralized location. So we found that by using all of these different models, it allows the dealerships and F&I managers to be more efficient overall.
This is great, Alex. Thank you. And I know we've gone over a few different models of virtual F&I and even two separate models for what centralized F&I could look like. I'm sure a lot of people are interested in virtual F&I sort of conceptually, but maybe they're unsure of how it would work for their company and for their model. Can we talk a little bit more about what sort of model might work for a different structure or a dealer group that might have stores in different states or are different sizes, right? And is it supplementing their F&I or is it, the primary driver? I think there are a lot of factors. So can we dive a little bit deeper into what might work best for different dealer groups?
Yeah, I think that both models of centralized F&I can work for any group. They can work any way. Obviously, with the left side, that first centralized model, typically we see that more in our smaller dealer groups. Maybe they only have about 3 or 4 stores. And then, of course, the one on the right, we see that more in our larger groups. Maybe if they're 10, 15, 20 store groups, that's where we see those. However, I think both of them can work for either kind of dealer group. Jonathan and Zach, do you guys have any?
Yeah, I'll add on to that a little bit. And Amanda, you mentioned, what's the goal or kind of what's the strategy? And there's 2 different ways I think to look at centralized. It could be to kind of supplement and fill in the gaps. Alex mentioned things like days off, nights off, vacations to fill those voids in the schedule. We see a lot of dealer groups where you sell too many cars for one F&I manager to handle, but not enough for 2. And what happens oftentimes is, then you have 2 and then neither F&I manager is getting a lot of deals, or maybe those deals go to someone else who's not a dedicated F&I manager, which we'll dive into in a little bit. Or you can look at virtual F&I not to supplement, but really to become your F&I department and to transition your F&I managers from working in the store to working in a centralized location to help out any of your stores. And then we also see kind of a hybrid of both of these models together. So it's really a customized solution on a dealer group by dealer group basis to see what makes the most sense.
And I think too, from what we're talking about, virtual F&I, specifically centralized F&I, is a great opportunity to enhance efficiencies across your business, right? It's efficiency for your F&I managers. They can take more deals and drive more profits. Your customers are happier. To me, it's kind of like no line, no wait F&I, right? Like there's always someone available to serve the customer. And that, of course, enhances the customer experience. And, we all like happy customers. But let's try to jump in a little bit more and talk about how centralized F&I can enhance efficiencies at the dealership, and really not just in F&I office, but across the business.
Yeah, absolutely, Amanda. I think you nailed it with your saying scaled efficiencies or scaled. I think that's perfect. As a dealer performance manager, that's what I look at every day, and I spend my time looking at is dealer performance. And so on stores, example, one of my dealer groups or one of my dealerships has almost that scenario where it was the side to the left where they were delivering deals between rooftops, and per their size, they only had 4 full-time business managers. But what that kind of created, just like Jonathan said, is that backup guy on the gal on the day off, or when somebody gets sick or something like that. So you have a non-full-time dedicated F&I person, maybe a sales manager or maybe an office assistant or somebody in that capacity delivering a deal. What we're used to seeing is those individuals have less of an average performance. And so by moving to the virtual F&I model in the center of your screen, what we've been able to do is distribute those backup deals to those other full-time business managers that may be in a different rooftop. So it might be, again, covering a day off, or nobody likes walking past an office and seeing a deal in the rack waiting for a free business manager. So this would allow that customer, as you said, not have to wait in line to be able to purchase their car. And so what we've been able to see is the why for the dealer is taking an average of 30 deals per month per business manager in this scenario, giving those backup deals to the full-time business managers, even keeping their performance or their PVR the same and giving them more swings at the plate. That's giving the dealer more revenue. And when you aggregate that over the year, that's a substantial impact to the dealer's bottom line. But not only that, that's given the business manager more swings at the plate. So they can raise their own performance, they can raise their own income, and there's a lot of other potentials that can come from that. Think of it as kind of keeping the deals with the hot hand. You know, it's football season, going with the quarterback that's having the winning streak, something like that.
Yeah, Zach, I like to think of this as kind of Moneyball for F&I. I think some of us may have seen that movie, and really making sure that your most qualified employees get in front of all of your customers, as opposed to a backup or a sales manager. It makes sure that those deals perform better. Your F&I managers get more turns. The customer gets into F&I faster, and your sales managers or whoever else was doing those backup deals can really focus on their core responsibilities at the dealership to drive more traffic into the showroom and in effect sell more cars. It just makes a lot of sense, and there's huge opportunity here.
Yeah, I have to agree. It's efficiencies across the board, right? Your sales managers, to your point, Jonathan, they're getting more time back in their day to do their jobs and to succeed at what they're for. And your F&I managers are getting more of the qualified deals at a higher PVR. Again, they're earning more. The dealership is earning more. It's really a win across the board. But I'm interested to know tactically, right, in shifting from a traditional to a virtual model, and maybe Zach, you can speak to this because I know you've had some of your dealer partners make that shift. Is there a learning curve for F&I managers switching from traditional to virtual, right? Is there a specific training that they need to have to be successful? Or on the flip side, is there some sort of, who should dealers seek out when they're looking at candidates? What sort of skill set should they really be looking for to know that this person would likely have success as a virtual F&I manager rather than a traditional F&I manager?
Yeah, absolutely. So I personally believe a great performing business manager can be a great performing business manager on virtual F&I. What I've seen firsthand is our dealers, they're really progressive thinkers. They're great operators. But what I'm seeing is sometimes there's a different level of capacity or thought between them and the talent pool in their stores. Can everybody from the top to the bottom of the organization think and perform at that level? And so what I really encourage you to do, or what I love about my role, that challenge, is being in the store shoulder to shoulder with those dealers. And through Jonathan and Alex and the virtual team, what we'll do is not only the big overarching concepts, but focus right down to the smallest detail. So for putting together custom process maps to your exact team, to your exact store, what does the blocking and tackling offensive playbook need to look like to be able to execute that deal flawlessly, not only to give your own associates the experience they want, but the customers. And when we take care of the customers is when we see the performance increase. So it could be those big overarching themes of when you ask a business manager, do this deal 4 miles away without moving, down to, okay, the other customers in the other showroom, how do you take a $500 deposit? Who does that? So there's a lot of little things to kind of talk about. And I would really encourage you to reach out to your field rep or Jonathan or Alex or the team, and we can really come shoulder to shoulder to you and put together that playbook.
Yeah, that's awesome feedback, Zach. And that kind of leads into my next point of, we've been talking about virtual F&I, but I think it's important to note too how JM&A supports the launch, supports the transition. That can be a big shift from people who are used to doing business a certain way for so long. But we really talk about how it's doing the same thing in a different way. So can we talk a little bit more about how do we support that transition and ensure there's ongoing success, not just at the launch, but from an ongoing perspective for virtual F&I for a dealer?
Sure, I'll take that. And it's, we just hit on, like, it's still F&I, and a high performing F&I manager can do this, but it's a change. It's a big shift. It's like, people on the call are probably going to smile because I say this all the time. It's like learning how to write with your other hand. And, you know how to do it. You know what the letters are, you know what the words are, but it's uncomfortable. It's weird. It's going to be kind of really slow when you start out. It's probably going to be a little messy. And it takes a lot of practice and a lot of repetition. And we really have a watch, do, teach mentality when we start working with a new dealer. And, the first thing we're going to do is what Zach talked about is really all the process mapping and getting all those little details figured out from a process and a technology standpoint. And I think it's really important to work with a team that has that understanding, that understands dealership technology, that understands dealership processes, to make sure that nothing falls through the crack and make sure your customers still have a great experience. But then when we launch it, we think it's really important to sit side by side with an F&I manager and side by side with the customer to make sure the launch is flawless. And for the first several deliveries, our team works with the F&I manager and actually takes the lead and delivers that deal on behalf of the dealership. And then after a few days of that, we'll transition over to the F&I managers doing that while we observe and assist and help them. And then it really requires follow-up and training and looking at the performance and tweaking and adjusting the process to make sure it's as perfect and seamless as possible.
And we just got another question that came in. I think it's pretty process or tactically oriented, so I'd like to hear what you guys have to say about it. So it says, how do we handle business managers working around high mileage, older or used units or cash deals?
Well, I would say the same as any other deal, really. It's still the really same solid F&I process. Hopefully you've got good solid products for those cars as well, and really just it's that same virtual experience that you would have for a brand new car.
And one thing, Jonathan, that we touched on earlier is in how JM&A Group supports dealers. One thing that is of course very important when we're talking about F&I is compliance. Can we speak to how do we handle compliance training in order to make deals happen virtually that, of course, are in compliance with local regulations and protect the dealership in that same regard?
Yeah, Amanda, before I do that, I want to go back to Michael's question because I just reread it. And I think the question was dancing around high mileage, older used units. And Michael, you bring up a great point because I think we know even in the store, if I'm an F&I manager and there's two deals that happen and one's got 2 points of reserve and it's a finance deal, and then another one is a cash deal on a 10-year-old used car, you know which one I'm going to choose if I have the choice. And I think it's the same thing in the virtual world. It's important to have a good, clear rotation in place so there's no real gray area as to who gets what deal. And that's part of our rollout and installation process is working with dealers on that. So, Amanda, I'm sorry I went back, but I just wanted to clarify that after I read that question.
No, of course.
As far as compliance, it's very similar to the in-store world. a lot of the compliance stays the same. We follow all the local rules, regulations to make sure that dealers stay in compliance. And then, before we launch any virtual process in a store, we want our dealers to work with their local counsel to make sure that everything is in compliance and buttoned up before we launch any processes in the store.
I'd like to, if we can, jump back to the slide that Zach was showing us on the performance impact. Zach, I noticed on this slide, when we look at the bottom, average deals goes from 30 to 61 plus. So I think anyone who's looking at this line might wonder, does your average, I don't mean to say average, does an average F&I manager have the capacity to handle this many deals and this level of volume? Because obviously we want to make sure that this is sustainable and realistic. So can we talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So without a shadow of a doubt, the average business manager can totally understand and handle an average of 61 deals a month. So we have any dealer principals or GMs on the call, I kind of think of you in this regard. And question is, on your last composite or financial statement, what was, I bet you can name your unapplied labor and service. Well, my question I'm going to pose to you is, have you ever thought about that same concept, but in your variable or particularly your F&I department? There's a lot of times where people in the variable department, go on a quest for the end of the internet. And when we kind of look at that, we've actually come up with a formula for unapplied labor or efficiency for F&I. And so what that is you kind of take the number of deals that a business manager is going to do per month times not only the delivery time, so the time to execute the deal from handshake to handshake, but also the admin time to clean it up, send it to the bank, send it upstairs to go through accounting, divided by the total number of work hours. You kind of create this labor efficiency for finance, just like you did for fixed ops, and you monitor that. So we actually have an example for you. And before anybody thinks I'm crazy, no, the expectation is not that you get to 100% perfect efficiency because you can't schedule every single person that comes in the showroom. So we kind of compare those two examples from before on the slide here. As you see, to the left is the traditional model and to the right is the virtual. So when we take the average business manager from before doing 44 deals, an hour to deliver the car handshake to handshake, and 30 minutes of cleanup time, divided by the nice, dreamy 40-hour work week for a business manager, that only comes to 41% efficiency. And that only gets worse when you look at what actual business manager hours are. But now in that same scenario, we take those backup deals or those overflow coverage deals and we move those to a full-time business manager on the same hours worked. You see how their efficiency increases. And not only does that mean, from the example before, more revenue for the dealer, more gross profit, more net profit, but that means more swings at the plate for the business manager so they can actually increase their income earning potential as well. And I'll kind of throw out another number for you. It's not on the slide, but various aspects of the virtual or centralized F&I processes could be enabled by e-signatures and a paperless kind of initiative. And so, just as an example, if a dealership sells 150 cars a month and they have two signatures, so husband, wife, co-buyer, buyer, and they have 12 forms that they need to complete that deal, all very realistic numbers, I think. When you aggregate that out, that's over 40,000 signatures a month. And when you talk about scaled efficiency, I mean, just think about touching 40,000 pieces of paper. How much time does that give back to your accounting office, your F&I office, to maybe look for other revenue opportunities, whether it's lease buyout, refis, product-only deals? There's a lot of other scaled efficiencies that can be had from this process.
Zach, I think, when we started looking at it this way, I think it was eye-opening for us because when you really start digging in, I think we all knew. I think anybody that spent time around an F&I office knows that there's downtime. And that's part of kind of just the nature of the role, right? We can't schedule out deliveries in F&I like we could schedule work in the shop. There's going to be downtime. So to think, and Zach mentioned this, to get to 100% is not realistic. But if we can take it from 40 to 50 or 50 to 60 or 60 maybe even to 70, the amount of turns that an F&I manager can get increases dramatically, which is going to be more opportunity for them. And then when we pair that with kind of the performance impact that we showed before, there's huge impacts there to the overall bottom line if we can make sure highly qualified F&I managers get more turns. And then if we look at it from the customer point of view, we can get customers through the process quicker because they're not waiting on that one F&I manager in the store. They've got a few F&I managers available to them, depending on what the setup looks like. It's really just a win-win-win for everybody involved in the process. But it's not possible unless we can look at F&I at a dealer group. Instead of looking at each individual rooftop having an F&I department, we look at the group as having an F&I department. And those F&I managers can help anyone within that organization, any customer within the organization. And we see benefits all over the place with this type model.
Yeah, I think that this is a powerful example of how incremental change can make a huge difference, not only for the bottom line of a dealership, but like Zach said, the earning potential of your F&I team, as well as, everybody wants a boost in their CSI and, having happy customers walk out the door virtually. But, that enhancement and experience for a relatively small lift in efficiency gain, I think that that's all the proof that you need to showcase that it's not only possible, but it's sustainable for a growth-minded business.
Yeah, Amanda, to your point, we sometimes might joke that, I live in the flyover states, and Jonathan might get sick of me saying this, but I'm trying to make North Dakota the new technology hub of automotive. We've planted a flag in North Dakota. If this can work at scale for not just one, but multiple groups and multiple dealerships in North Dakota, I mean, this can work. It's here. Customers love it.
And I think that may speak to, we got a couple more questions in through the chat that I want to make sure that we get to. So can this expand your addressable market?
I'll take that.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely. It can expand your PMA. So, right now, I can't name a dealer out there that has more inventory than what they want. And so absolutely, whether it's that you have the, what's today's special, we have the car. And so I think a real example of what we're seeing today is a customer maybe out of state or across the state or wherever that was looking for this exact color combo or trim level. Absolutely. This allows you to be face-to-face just like we are now and walk through a deal. I mean, it allows it positions your associates to be able to take care of the customer where they are and how they want to do it. And I kind of, just like the Amazon approach, I mean, it really can bring some of that to your dealership's storefront.
Yeah, just to add to that, Amanda, a few weeks ago, I was at a dealer group in the Northeast, and believe it or not, they had a vehicle that was pretty limited, and a customer in Texas bought this vehicle and worked with the salesperson over the phone to buy the car. Salesperson comes into F&I. F&I manager immediately starts printing the paperwork. And I said, time out. What are we doing here? Well, he said, I'm just going to print the paperwork. I'm going to FedEx it to the customer. We'll get it back and go from there. Now, this is a dealer that's rolled out virtual F&I on the in-store in the centralized model. And so we slowed down, we stopped, and we said, look, you can do the same thing for this customer who's not in the store that you would do for a customer that's in one of your other dealership locations. So they slowed down. They followed the virtual F&I process. To make a long story short, the customer bought 4 products in F&I through the process. And those are products that just wouldn't have been sold in the past, because I think we can all remember a time, or maybe a time that this week in your dealership where paperwork was just mailed out, where the customer didn't get that full F&I presentation. So yeah, absolutely. There's all kinds of opportunities here.
Jonathan, what you just said kind of really brings up a point that hits home with me. And, it's interesting that you said that group was already doing virtual F&I. And I would really encourage anybody, if that's the initial reaction of somebody that may already be doing it, but they're not used to doing it outside the store, that's a prime example of some of the benefits of having that custom process map, of having our team kind of come in and really show you how to do that. Because it's not just putting a business manager on Zoom. It's more than that. It's how do you execute the deal from state and local taxes to every single form and down payment and everything in between. So that's a prime example, I think, of a customer or a dealership partner that's already doing it. If they still have that knee-jerk reaction, I don't fault another dealer for having that reaction too.
And I know you mentioned, you just threw it out of Zoom, Zach, but I think it's the question of a lot of people who are interested in virtual F&I is there an add-on, right? Is there a technology required that's going to require, building it into my system and upskilling people? So let's just touch on that for a minute. What sort of technology do you need in order to be able to deliver virtual F&I?
I'll take that. It's what I'll say is you probably have most of it already in your dealership. You need obviously a camera and good lighting and good sound and a video conferencing technology. And then you also need tools to contract the deal electronically, to present a menu electronically, to present products electronically, and to collect signatures. And what we find is a lot of times dealerships already have these tools in place. They may or may not be used on a regular basis, or they already do business with a large DMS provider that offers those capabilities, and it's just adding some of that to the mix. And one thing that our team really does is work with your dealership to do an analysis to figure out exactly what you need, to figure out exactly what that DMS and menu system setup needs to look like, and then build that process, as Zach has mentioned, around that.
We had another question come in through the chat. It says, if you are doing finance remotely for a group, who's collecting steps and getting those to finance? Is a salesperson emailing them? What's the best practice you found packaging a deal?
Alex, you want to talk about that a little bit?
I was like, I'll take that. So I personally think it would be case by case. Some dealerships, they have processors that actually end up packaging the deals at the end. And then some dealerships, it is up to the F&I manager to go after those steps and get those steps. So I think it's just case by case, depending on what the dealership has and what they're willing to have their employees do. Typically, when I've done deals remotely, if there are steps that need to be collected from the customer, both myself and the salesperson would be reaching out to the customer. We'd be working together to get those steps from the customer. So that way we can both ensure that the deal gets processed and completed and sent to the back office. So I think it's just depending on how the dealership would like to handle it. But that's also something that we would analyze and go through and create a whole process for as well.
Yeah, so I'll chime in there from a different perspective. So again, not to keep going back to the same thing, but creating that custom process, because we don't want you to change everything that you're doing in a store, because you still need to focus on taking care of your customers. And so what we can do is look through that neutral perspective or that neutral lens and kind of be that offensive coordinator to see who's going to play that role the best. And it's really interesting to see on the bottom side of that funnel, when you have a business manager in a different location and a customer just have 3 tabs on the iPad, and they go from the menu to filling out the paperwork to signing the bank contract electronically right then. So I think it was Matt that asked the question. It's a great question, and that can be a little different for each dealer, but it actually, when you break out that process map, it gets a lot easier than what you think. But I don't want to oversell it. It takes a lot of thought process to see where the Lego pieces kind of fit in that puzzle.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Zach. And I want to say a quick thank you to everyone on the call and Jonathan and Alex as well. We do have a few more minutes to collect a few more questions. So if there's anything that you would like our panel to address, we've got broad topics or, the real tactical process-oriented ones. You've got pretty much the best people to be asking. So feel free to drop in any more. With that said, Jonathan, I know that this has probably sparked a lot of curiosity, generally speaking, about virtual F&I and some interest in perhaps the centralized model. Can you share a little bit more about how dealers can get started if this is something that they're interested in pursuing?
Yeah, absolutely. If you sat through this call with us today and you may have thought, well, that might make sense for me, or I do have a sales manager who's doing deals who's performing significantly below the full-time F&I manager, or you know what, nights and weekends we get really backed up in F&I and I could use a solution for that. I would really encourage you to consider a centralized strategy and to really start looking at F&I across your dealer group as opposed to looking at it at each individual store. And we would love to talk to you in more detail about what that could look like for you. You're going to get a link to our virtual F&I page. And if you go there, there's a form to contact us. And if you fill that out, we'll make sure to reach out to you and talk to you about what centralized F&I could look like in your dealership. And I'll take that one step further. What we'll also do for you is, you saw Zach went over a performance impact kind of scenario as well as an efficiency scenario. And if you share a little bit of information about your dealer group with us, we'll prepare an analysis for you on what the impact of centralized F&I could be for you in your group from an efficiency standpoint, from a performance standpoint, and then we'll really talk about what the customer experience could look like as well. So look forward to talking to anybody that wants to talk about centralized. We love to talk to like-minded dealers, to progressive dealers who are interested in improving the customer experience and moving the ball forward, and just sharing some ideas and talking about what it could look like for you.
Awesome. Thank you, Jonathan. And I will actually also, I sent through a link for everybody to access. It'll take you to our virtual F&I page, and right at the top of the page, you'll see a button to fill out a form and send over the information so that we can go ahead and get the conversation started with you. In addition to that, I will also drop in just a moment, a link to the automotive news study that Jonathan referenced earlier, in case you want to take a look at that. And again, I encourage you to do that. It has a ton of information from 1,000+ customers around the nation, and it's broken down by lots of different segments of the audience. So really, really interesting information, and it really just drives home the fact that this shift to digital and virtual is something that people are not only asking for, but it's something they're expecting, and it's something that they want to engage with. So I encourage you to go ahead and download that study as well. But it doesn't look like we have any more questions coming in. So at this point, I will say thank you very much, everyone, for your time. Thank you, Jonathan, Alex, and Zach, for sharing your insights with us. And have a wonderful afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.